This is the Air Check. The Air Check. The Air Check with Mike Lemons.
The Air Check with Mike Lemons.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Air Check. I'm Mike Lemons. This show is where we catch up with graduates of the radio broadcasting program, check in on their careers, see how they're doing, and just have a good time. This morning, I'm happy that we're being joined by a guy who was here probably in the mid-2000s, I want to say. Did our music directing thing, and he's been enjoying a career over at 101 ESPN as an executive producer. So without further ado, here is Mike Ryder. What's up, Mike?
What's up, Lemons? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm glad you could make it.
I'm happy to be here, man. Anything for you, you know that.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're going to make me cry. So we're joined by Mike Ryder. As I mentioned earlier, Mike is an executive producer over at 101 ESPN. He also taught for us for several years, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Mike, as you know, other than 89.9, which I manage, I listen to that a lot. I'm a big fan of 101 ESPN. I like a lot of the talent here. We'll go through your path there, but let's just start by saying, is this a place where you thought you would have the most success in your radio career?
Oh, never. Did I think I was going to be in sports radio when I got into the program? Never. I was a music guy. I liked music, listening to music, going to concerts, and that was the main reason I went to 89.9 is when I was, 13 years old, I won tickets to a Warped Tour at a McDonald's that 89.9 was at. They were giving away tickets, and I won those tickets, and that's how I found out about the station. And so when I wrapped up high school, I wanted to get into music. I wanted to stay with that. I didn't play any instruments, so of course I was like, I'm not going to go into a band. Next best thing, hey, let's talk about music. So that's the main reason I joined the program. Like sports, played sports in high school, never thought I would be in sports radio. It's kind of a trip. But learning everything I did at 89.9 kind of opened that door for me, which is just wild.
So let's go through it. I'm going to ask you more questions about ESPN. I want to know more about the talent and the personalities there. But as we go into that, take us from the time you left here. You were a music director. When you left here, and then what did your career look like in radio? I know you did some internet radio, but all with the same company and ended up in the building where ESPN was, and that's kind of how that started, right?
Yeah, so not only am I in the same building, I'm on the same dial. I'm on 101.1 for 3 different stations now. So when I wrapped up the program, I did my internship, and I was lucky enough to have Tim Albright as my production teacher, who I ended up taking over for eventually. But Tim helped me get an internship at 101.1 The River, Stephen DC's morning show. Tim was the production guy on that show. He helped produce, and Tim got me an internship with Stephen DC. Answering some phones, doing some wild stuff. I think I actually dressed up as the devil on June 6, 2006, 666. They sent me to the Exorcist house dressed as a devil. Cops were called, of course. I think another time I went to a hotel looking for Jessica Alba. Some wild stuff like that. So I did my internship at 101.1 The River, and they flipped formats, and they went to 101.1 Move-In. And on Move-In, they had an HD station that was iChannel. And since I was in the building, people liked me. And actually, someone else who was in the WLCA program worked there, Virgil Sterneman. And he recommended me, and I got a job at iChannel. And that was an independent HD2 internet radio station, unsigned bands and stuff like that. So I did that for about a year and a half. And 101.1 Move-In, the main FM1, flipped to ESPN Radio, which was kind of a shock for all of us. And again, they needed board ops. They needed someone who could help run some weekend programming, some play-by-play. And they're like, hey, people say nice things about you. You know how to do it. You just want to be a part-time board op until you find another gig being a DJ or an on-air talent. I was like, sure, yeah, keep me employed, of course. And I've been with ESPN, I guess 11, 12 years ever since then. And now I'm the executive producer. It's kind of crazy to go from a part-time board operator to the executive producer of a station.
That's crazy too. So congratulations to you, by the way, because now you're kind of the boss of some of the people I love to listen to, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, you were here when you did music when you were here. We've interviewed past students before, and it's strange where people end up, right? I mean, when you come into the program, we often say, and I say we now because you said this when you were a teacher as well, you're not necessarily going to end up where you think you're going to end up. we have, 3 or 4 students killing it in country radio, all of which hated country radio when they were here. And as you said, you're a music guy and you've been doing sports talk radio. So it just goes to show that you don't know where radio is going to take you, but we're going to teach you how to do any of it while you're here.
Oh yeah. And like for me, like, again, I was a music director and I was into the music and stuff like that. But like the production classes, I enjoyed them. I wasn't as great as our production director at the time, which was Joey Bradfish, who's just killing it out in Phoenix. But he was our production director, and I did it, as part of the classes and stuff like that. But when I went over to 101 ESPN, I was working weekends, I was working overnights, I was there by myself doing play-by-play. And in my spare time, I was like, hey, I'm going to loop this bed. I'm going to put a promo together for the morning show. Hey, why not? I got some free time. And the PD took notice, and he's like, hey, man, you're really good at this production stuff. Do you want to start doing it more? Next thing I know, I'm the station's imaging and production director, which I never thought I would be doing that either. And then that led me to coming back to Lewis and Clark and actually teaching production. Again, to me, which is wild because that's never something I planned on doing, but learning all those different skills at Lewis and Clark in the program opened up all these doors. And again, I'm in radio for almost 15 years, Mike, in one building in one city, which is unheard of.
That is unheard of. It really is. Yeah.
It really is, yeah.
You mentioned Joey Bradfish out in Arizona. We talked to him and Nick a few months ago, and that was pretty funny. But let's talk about Tim Albright for a second, right? Tim Albright is also a former student who became a production director, started his own audio-visual company. Let's go ahead and throw some praise at Tim, right? I mean, he taught you production. He gave you some entry into radio by offering some internships to you. What was it like learning from Tim, and then how did that prepare you to take over his job in teaching production?
Sure, yeah. So when I was a student of Tim's, Tim was very chill. He made it easy. You didn't feel one thing I liked about those classes, we all listened to each other's material. So if you made a commercial, not only is Tim going to hear it, the other students are going to hear it. So you're trying to have fun with everyone. You're trying to impress the other people in the classroom. And Tim was just very cool about that. He wasn't too hard on you. He made you realize, like, hey, this is fun. Don't take this too seriously. Some people are going to be better, some people aren't, but the creativity, the stuff like that. And that's what's really opened up the door for me with production. I wasn't always the technical guy. I was more of a creative guy, more of a fun guy, and Tim helped me learn that. And when Tim helped me get my internship with Stephen DC at the River, Tim was doing production, and I kind of worked under Tim a little bit. And then when Tim took, I think, vacation or some time off, he recommended me to fill in for him. So I'm a 21-year-old kid filling in on a syndicated morning radio show in a top 20 market, which was unbelievable. But Tim was just always very calm and took his time with us, and you never felt like you were behind or like you didn't know what you're doing. It's like if you did this simple little thing, he's like, oh, hey, that's great. Here's a little tweak. Here's a little edit. Here's something else you can do to kind of improve it. And just doing it over and over, you just kind of learn your own style and technique and stuff like that.
You talked about how you filled in for him when he would take a break. Much of that's happening now with our current students with you. I mean, the lucky thing is when you taught here, you provided a lot of opportunities for our students over there. And there have been a few students to go through our program who you took to ESPN with you, who are still there now and who are kind of expanding their careers at ESPN.
Yeah, currently I have 3 Lewis and Clark graduates at 101 ESPN. We have Tanner Hendrickson, who is the producer of the Dan McLaughlin Show with BK. He also produces the afternoon show, BK and Ferrario. Michael Paisley, who was there, I guess that would have been 5 years ago. He is full-time overnight. He does a lot of our audio cutting, editing. He makes sure everything runs properly at night. He checks the logs, a lot of that stuff. And Luke Levenger. He's still with us. He does some part-time work, part-time producing, filling in. He does the fast lane. You'll hear him on air quite a bit. And he works out at the racetrack too, so he's kind of busy with a lot of stuff. But if I were to sit here and think about everyone that's came through the door from promotions and street teams and board operators, I want to say we've had probably at least maybe close to 15 people from Lewis and Clark since I started teaching there, which is unbelievable.
Well, it means a lot to us that you guys think that much of our students, and thank you for the opportunities you helped give them. And I think you said even recently you were approached by saying, hey, you still have that pipeline to Lewis and Clark. We get some good students from there.
Yeah, the promotions department literally comes down to me and goes, do you still have that hookup? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, the Lewis and Clark hookup. I'm like, yeah, I got that hookup. They're like, we need street teamers.
Right.
And it's not that like, oh, we can't get them. It's like, we want good ones. They're actually talking about, hey, we have an issue with people not working hard or not wanting to work. And I explained, at Lewis and Clark, you have people who are in the radio program, and I'm not trying to rip other programs, but like these people are live on air doing actual radio. These are people who you can plug in today, and they know exactly what you're talking about. You say, hey, I need you to work on this promo or make this cut, or I need you to pull up an access unit and run the board. They've done all of these things. So they are hungry to have Lewis and Clark students come into the building because they actually know what they're doing. Well,
that's something that we take pride in, right? I mean, students start in August. By late September, early October, they're talking on the air for the first time, and then after that first semester, they have their own shifts, and they're on the air here for well over a year and a half, sharpening their skills, getting better from what they learned in production, what was taught to them in other classes, and we try to treat it as much like a commercial station as possible. Did you feel that was the case? I mean, when you got to other places, did you felt like you knew something because we treated it? I mean, we have promotions directors and music directors and things just like they do at a commercial station. We can't completely mirror exactly what you do in a commercial station, but we're pretty close, yeah?
Oh, yeah. And that's the nice thing is, like, you have these titles, like you're saying, you have a promotions director, a music director, you have people working on traffic and stuff like that. And it's nice to know, like, oh, hey, go talk to so-and-so in promotions, and they understand what you mean. Or when you say traffic, they know you're not referring to traffic and weather, that you're referring to the traffic log and the commercial log and things like that. I mean, for me, I came in and I knew Adobe and I was using some of the software. It's the exact same software we use at Hubbard Broadcasting. So you're talking about top major stations, 105.7 The Point, the Legend of KC95, New Country, WIL, 106.5 The Arch. We're using the exact same software that you're using at Lewis and Clark. I mean, we're using the Adobe Audition for audio editing. We're using Wide Orbit. I mean, your boards are almost the exact same boards that we're using. So it was kind of nice and refreshing not to have to go in and feel intimidated by these big mega boards or all this new equipment. It's like, oh, wow, this is the same equipment we use at Lewis and Clark. No offense to Lewis and Clark, but you would be surprised that a community college would be so advanced in their technology.
Yeah, we've had people from other schools come through, and even people from local stations come in to this space in this room and go, wow, that's pretty cool. Can we come use your space? So kudos to the college for giving us that support. And like you said, though, it's just prepared students for when they got to those positions.
Yeah, and I remember we had people like Mike Keith, who is doing amazing things right now. He was one of the he did his internship at Hubbard Broadcasting, and he came in and he knew how to run a remote. And they're like, we've never had a street teamer know how to run a remote or how to engineer. And the next thing you know, Mike is advancing, and he advanced past us. He had to leave because he was too good for us, and now he's doing great things.
Yeah, we interviewed him a couple of months ago as well. It's like 4 stations in 3 different markets. I mean, that's with Atlanta being his hub station. That's pretty. But you kind of knew that, right? You knew Mike Keith was going to advance to that point just because he had that drive. So, we can provide all of the equipment, and we can try to push you in the right direction and try to create an environment in which to learn, but it's really what the students choose to do with it. That's why when students over the years, even in interviews here, they want to thank me or the program for their success, and really their success is their own, and what they choose to do with the equipment that they can learn on, what they choose to do with the advice that we give them, but it's really what they do with it and how they're able to propel to the next level.
Well, I think you're being a little humble there, Mike. I owe quite a bit to you. I tell you that all the time, and I know you hate it. I was actually talking with Tanner Hendrickson, a former student at Lewis and Clark, who's now at 101 ESPN, and we were both joking that we owe everything to Mike Lemons. So take a little credit for what you created, man. Seriously.
Well, I'll take a small bit of credit, but once again, it has to be you guys and your drive and your success. So I can just open the door. It's how you guys walk through it, and you guys have done a great job. So thank you for that, though. Staying on radio just a little bit, and I'm interviewing now for a video podcast. Podcasting is a major thing that's a part of radio now. Companies are changing their names to be more audio everything, right? Instead of just radio. We're trying to change the concept of what radio is because it's not your dad's radio anymore. Talk about the changes you've seen in your time there. I mean, they've been massive. We don't have enough time to do that. But radio isn't just radio anymore because it's so much more than that.
Sure. I mean, when ESPN started on day one, we didn't podcast shows. We aired a show. If you missed the show, hey, you missed the show. And then we started podcasting our live shows. We started putting those online, and we're using websites like SoundCloud to do it. We weren't even housing them on our website. And then, of course, Apple, iTunes, all that type of stuff started blowing up. And then now we podcast every show. We podcast everything that's on our airwaves, goes on our website. It gets pushed out on our social media. And now we create podcasts outside of our local programming that you're not going to hear Monday through Friday. We do shows like the Last Minute Blues podcast. We have betting shows. We have fantasy shows, Cardinals insider shows. And the thing with those podcasts now, the new technology or the new way to do it is video. It's putting it on YouTube, and that's the next step we're doing. We're going to put cameras in all of our studios. We've already started with 105.7 The Point, and I think the Arch has done it, but we're slowly moving down. Soon 101 ESPN is going to have cameras in their studios, and it's going to be video podcasts. We're going to be doing that with the Last Minute Blues podcast with Jamie Rivers and two guys from The Point. All of our studios are being equipped not only to record the podcast, but to have video to interact. To put it on YouTube. I mean, you look at the things that the Rizzuto show does in the mornings on 105.7 The Point, and the interaction and the numbers they get on YouTube alone is unbelievable. And I mean, we have our meetings with corporate, and they hit home video, video, video. That's the big thing we're pushing for right now is not only podcasts, but video podcasts.
So we're trying to stay up with that, right? And I think we've done a good job by trying to take it to that next level and do things like this. Because for us, it's really twofold, right? I mean, we do this, and people watch this interview I do with you, students who might be interested. They're like, yes, that's what I want to do. I don't necessarily want to be a DJ, or I don't want to necessarily be on the radio. But being able to teach them this and show them the capabilities by doing interviews like this, that works too. But it also builds listenership of our FM. It also builds attention to our podcast, and it just all kind of steamrolls much the same as you guys would do it with revenue. So you guys can monetize all of this stuff.
Yep. Especially on YouTube. And I mean, and you talk a lot about the younger generation. That's a big question in radio. How do we reach the millennials or the younger generation younger than that? How do we reach them? Where are they at, Mike? They're on social media. They're on TikTok, which we're actually creating a TikTok for 101 ESPN. Never thought we'd be doing TikTok.
Yeah.
We created an Instagram, you know. But that's how we're going to reach that younger audience, is being on the Twitches, the YouTubes,
Sure.
Making those small 1-minute clips that catches their short attention span and draws them in like, oh, hey, I enjoyed that 30-second video. Oh, yeah. I can now go watch this full thing. Oh, they're on the radio at this time. That's how we're trying to pull in that younger audience, is by using social media and video.
This podcast we're doing now, which will last approximately a half hour or so. That's the other thing too, right? It doesn't have to be exact when you do podcasts that go out on the internet. But I'll pull out a minute and a half clip, a 2-minute clip or something, and use that to promote the whole thing. And that's just kind of how things work. So let's go back several years to your time here. When you think about your time at Lewis and Clark, what sticks in your mind? Was it a particular event? Was it a few events? You've stayed friends, I'm sure, with people from your class.
Yeah.
Recall some of the things you think about when you think about your time at LC.
Well, I remember one of the first classes was one of your classes. It might have been Introduction to Announcing or something like that. Of course, I think anyone who's went through the program always remembers reading the lines about the man with dyslexia. You have to read these lines like saying things like unique New York,
right,
and
right.
The proper phrasing. I think that's one thing I always find anyone who's went through the program, they always talk about some of those lines, which I all find pretty funny. But I remember one of the first classes I had with you, you did this great thing where you asked us to tell the room, what do we think other people see us as? Like if someone were to meet me, how do I think that they perceive me? And it was a really amazing thing to be that honest and say what we thought. And I felt like I got kind of deep with my feelings, just, because I was a young rocker kid. My hair was actually like this, and to hear the response from you, that you believe the same things, but it's different. That is not true, that I am a hard worker, that I am not how some people may perceive me. That was really a different thing for me. I never had stuff like that in high school. And with you in that program, the honesty and the maturity and the growing up was a big thing for me. I think I really grew up in the program. But let's get to the fun stuff. I don't want to, be sappy or anything.
Right.
The 89 hours. I will never forget the 89 hours of Christmas. Again, bringing up Joey Bradfish, my guy. Him and I were selected to do the 89 hours of Christmas. which was amazing, being locked in the studio for about 4 days. And I remember you having to come up and get on us because we weren't sleeping. I think we went about 2 days drinking energy drinks, staying up until 3 a.m. on the radio. And I remember you coming up like, guys, you got to sleep. You got to be up in the mornings. But the 89 hours was unbelievable. A famous band now, Ludo. We actually had them in studio performing.
Crazy. Yeah, how crazy is that?
They didn't even hit big yet. I mean, they were big, but not
right.
touring big. And I remember Joey and I are eating Emo's Pizza in the hallways with Ludo, with like 5 or 10, listeners who paid money. Those were really great memories. And then the specialty shows. I had a blast having my own show on Friday nights with Virgil Sturdivant, taking requests, doing a little bit more of that morning show. I've always been a morning show guy. I grew up listening to morning show radio. So I always like the games. I like the interaction. I like the bits and the skits and stuff like that. So I had a lot of fun. I feel like that helped me grow. There's one thing to turn on a mic and say, hey, that was this band. Check out this concert. Here's some info on our website. To letting your personality come out with another person and you start to build your radio personality. I think that was a tremendous help for me. And I'm still great friends with Virgil Sturdivant to this day. I mean, he's one of my best friends, and it all started at that program.
Well, Joey, I interviewed a few weeks ago, and he said his most fond memory was 89 Hours of Christmas. So it's a good thing you both said the same thing, or else that'd have been a lot awkward. So that's good. But, Mike, it really goes back to that exercise you're talking about. Yes, in that first semester, we can talk about articulation and, making sure that you say 100 instead of 100 and things like that.
10.
And 10 instead of 10 and all of those things. And it's not so much being exact there as it is helping you get success early and making things better. And that personality profile thing we do, it's real about, let's be honest with ourselves. All of us tend to build these walls to protect us, our defense mechanisms, right? And those are great in protecting us, but often they're built with things you believe to be true that really aren't, or things you think others think of you that they really don't. And once you can get past that, defense mechanisms are great, but they're also impede your progress. So it's trying to break those things down so that you can really shine and grow. So that's kind of what that process is meant to do, so that you can explore that personality with other people on the air.
And that's one thing that I took away the most from my teaching is the amount of students who have reached out either during the program or after, how they say how much you helped me break out of my shell. Jake recently hit me up on Facebook and he's like, hey man, I just want to say thank you for what you did for me. I'm not in radio, but I'm a more confident person. I feel better speaking and talking to people, and what I'm saying, I'm behind it. It's just unbelievable to get that from students that are in their shell and they come to this program and they're a completely different person by the time they get out. It's really a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, and that's what what we take pride in the most is we've had students that have come to to reunions or called me and said the same thing. I'm not in radio, but the confidence I have is amazing. And if we can't get you a career in radio, at least if we can give you some confidence, it's just going to help you progress through life so much easier. So
and I think that's what's fun with some of the classes too. It's not like you're in front of a lecture hall and you're reading a paper about a topic you don't like. A lot of the classes, it becomes a family after a while, and you're really comfortable around the people because you're in a lot of classes together. But it's that camaraderie of sitting around and making fun of each other's stuff or praising each other's stuff or helping out or liking this. And a lot of the projects you work on together. And I think that's one of the best things about Lewis and Clark is that it becomes this tight-knit family. And like you're saying, you stay friends with these people for life because it's not just a classmate, it's a coworker, it's a friend now.
So there's no surprise why I'd want to do this for 27 years, because even though you guys are my students to start, we're such a close-knit family, we kind of become friends. And not kind of, it's a real deal. I always like to say, just, think of me as a cool uncle. I never want to be here that I'm your second dad or anything, because that makes me too old. But, make me a cool uncle or whatever. And we've been to concerts together, and you taught for me, and none of that would have happened had you not been a student and I've been the teacher first. And that's why I continue to do this for so long, because it's such a luxury to get to meet people like you and others. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
You were music director, which means we've always had a lot of concert tickets, and music directors always got first right of refusal on concerts. Did you take advantage of that much when you were here?
Yes, Mike, I did.
I knew the answer to that question before I asked.
That was one of the perks. Again, like I was a music guy, so I went to every show I could, and it was a bummer when I left the college. I was like, oh man, I don't have this hookup anymore. I'm buying tickets. I mean, I moved to University City, the Loop, to live by the pageant. That's why I live here, so I can walk down the street and go to concerts. And I remember the day that Hubbard acquired Casey and the Point. Not only was I excited because, I mean, I'm a rock guy. I grew up listening to those stations. I listened to the Rizzuto Show in the mornings. I listened to You, Man. I listened to those stations, so I loved them. But when they came over, I knew the hookup was back. So
Right. That's cool. That's pretty cool, though, to be in the same building with those people that you listen to, right? I mean, you're in the same building now as those people that you grew up idolizing or listening to. But also now you're kind of on the management level. So not that you're over anybody at those other stations, but, you know, you still have to kind of direct people and tell them kind of what to do, right?
yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like the seeing some of these people. I mean, like you think about Jeff Burton, who used to be on with Jeff and Tom. Like I was a little kid listening to that stuff. I remember when there used to be the Woody Show, and then Riz joined him, and now he's Rizzuto, and like seeing him in the building. Like I listened to that guy. I used to drive to Lewis and Clark listening to the Rizzuto Show. Don't tell ESPN I said that. But I mean, like my dad's been listening to You Man Favaz on KC since I was a child. I remember going out in the garage as either Cardinals baseball or as KC 95. So to be in a building with those people, I mean, it's unbelievable. And then Danny Mack coming over. Dan McLaughlin, voice of the Cardinals on Bally Sports Midwest. I mean, to me, he's the voice of the Cardinals. I know a lot of people like, hey, it's Jack Buck. When you were younger, you listened to the radio, you listened to Jack. For me, all I know is Dan.
Sure.
So to have a person like Dan in my building, and then Dan's texting me, hey, what's up, buddy? Dan's giving me a call. Like, I'll like show people like, I got a voicemail from Dan. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
My mom jokes around all the time. She's like, could you ever imagine when you were a little kid that you would be shaking hands with Isaac Bruce or going to a bar with Brett Hall? No, never thought that in a million years. So I'm really lucky.
You produced a show with DeMarco Farr for years at the Fast
Oh
Lane.
yeah, I mean, I was running Rams games. I was getting paid to run Rams games for every Sunday. I would go in and like, I'm getting paid to watch football. I mean, it's not a bad gig.
Right.
And the nice thing is, I feel like at my building, since I've been there for so long and I've kind of come up, everyone knows me. I'm kind of their coworker. With like Randy Carricker, I've worked with Randy for over 10 years. I was a producer with him, a board operator with him. I'm friends with him. So I don't feel like it's a boss type of relationship. I feel like we're all on the same page.
Sure.
We all have the same goal. And you don't really have to talk down. You don't have to lecture. I think everyone understands. And that's one thing about me. My boss, Tommy Mattern, who runs a lot of stations at Hubbard Broadcasting, he always says, I like you because you're a radio guy. You're not a sports guy.
Right.
You're a radio guy.
Right.
And that's what we kind of need. And this is no offense, but at 101, we have a lot of former athletes. We have a lot of people who've never even been in a radio program. These are guys who played professional sports. We want their opinion. We want their analysis. They have great insight. So we bring those guys over, and they don't understand the radio side. So it's nice to have someone who can explain radio, explain what we're trying to do, why we do a tease, what a segue is. Like those little things like that is really helpful for those guys.
I was a graduate from here, and I went on to do some on-air, and then I did radio sales and some other things. And knowing all aspects of the radio business made me a better salesperson. So being a radio guy, and we're going to teach people radio, regardless of whether you go country, you do sports, or whatever you do, we're going to produce those radio guys. So before we end, Mike, if we could, you want to pull out some names? You already did Virgil and Joey and some others. And you mentioned us being a family, and you stay friends with those people for a long time. Is there anything else that pops to mind? Are there any other students, or was there a particular event outside of 89 Hours that you could share with us?
I don't know if you still do them. They used to be the VIP remotes. I think we did at the Firehouse downtown Alton. Maybe that was one of them.
Several places, Firehouse, and there was a place called Morales Tacos we did them, and I think we did them at Orbs and a few others,
Well, and one thing I liked that there was, there's the first years and then there's the second years. Sometimes the first years are older than the second years or vice versa. But I always remember looking up to my second years. I had Devin, Andy Eads, DJ Sheeter, those were people who I looked up to, and they made you feel comfortable. I don't know why. Like, I might have been the same age as them, but I was intimidated by them. But they would bring you in the studio, and they would make you feel comfortable. They make you feel a part of that, and they would teach you. Chris Schrage, another person who was just amazing and helped out a lot. And so then when you become the second year, you want to share that same stuff. I remember Jake Snyder. He was my guy who I got to teach and stuff. And, I mean, Tabitha Rhodes and Andrea Thiessen. I remember those people. I worked with Tabitha at Jimmy John's when I was in high school.
Right.
And Tabitha's one of those people. She's sweet, very quiet, and she joins this radio program, and this personality just comes out of her. Yeah. A lot of great shows with those two as well. So.
And that's how the process works, right? I mean, you might be intimidated, or you look up to the second years because look how freely they speak. Look how confident they are. And then a year later, you're in that same spot because you went through that year of growing and learning and being more comfortable with delivering whatever. And they were there. Those second years were there. So it's they want to help and get you to that point.
Yeah, I'll never forget. And that's one of the great things about Lewis and Clark at WLCA is that it's live. It's local. It's on air. I remember knowing what my first stop set was. I was in with DJ Sheeter, and he was cool. He's like, hey, man, here's what you're going to be doing. Here's the songs. Here's the bands. Get some ad-lib. Do some prep work. I sat there and practiced that voice intro probably 7 or 8 times. I nailed it. As soon as I pushed that button and it said red, it said live, Mike, I wish I could play the audio for you, but it was – and you could hear me swallow. You could hear the swallow on the mic.
Right.
That was the urge of 89.9, and that was all I had. But to do it live and local, you feel so comfortable. And I remember when I had at iChannel.fm, when I got an opportunity, literally they had me come in, and they're like, hey, nice to meet you. Why don't you hop in the studio for an hour? I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
I went in there and turned on the mic and did the thing. And the greatest thing, the first artist that I did on iChannel was Steve Ewing, who was from The Urge, which was the first voice intro I did at Lewis and Clark.
That's crazy. That's wild.
And I remember having the ad lib. That was always the thing you push. We had these big old binders just full of random facts and information. And I took my folder in there, and I went in there, and I crushed it, and I felt comfortable. I had my information, and I felt comfortable being on the air.
Yeah, confidence comes from preparation, and we try to do that a bunch. We don't make them carry those big, heavy binders anymore because, there's a lot better ways to do that now. But
right.
Mike, thank you so much for being a great student. Thank you for being a great instructor. Students loved you, and I remember that time when I called you to say, hey, you think you might want to teach? It was a phone call you didn't expect to get from me, I don't think. And that worked out well. Thanks for all the opportunities that you've been giving to our students. You mentioned Tanner, and he's doing a great job currently there. And thanks for being a friend, Mike. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And if there's any students out there, Mike, I'm just going to do my ad right now. You can go to hubbardbroadcasting.com and apply for a street team job right now. We're looking.
Sure.
We're looking for you, Lewis and Clark kids.
Well, and I put out the notices too, so you'll be getting some people talking to you soon. Again, Mike, thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Mike.